Greetings, everyone. That was odd. Greetings, everyone. Can you hear me?
Well, am I the first one here?
My dear Vanessa, I think you're the first one here.
Ah, well, that's nice for a change.
It is, and it's always good to see you.
Oh, thank you. I kick myself when there's like so often with the forums I'll come in very late because I get distracted. Well, you get distracted by information.
I understand.
You're following a lead on something.
I understand that completely.
Well, I'm not really sure quite how I would fit in with FOECast because it seems like at this point it's still more oriented to institutions and in the future of educational institutions, and I'm sort of a loose independent here.
Oh, I hear you. But let me hang on. In order to start answering that question, let me welcome Anthony and JJ. I'm glad to see you all. Just as a quick meta note, I'm speaking to you from an airport in Vermont. Here, I can show you.
So, well, I knew it wasn't home.
Yeah. So if at any point...
we hear airplanes?
Well, that's okay. There aren't that many. It's a small airport. But if at any point my signal gets iffy, please let me know. And hello, Kisa. Always good to see you. The overall topic for today is we're kicking off the FOECast ideation week, and we're trying to figure out what some kind of new project would look like. And the idea of the week is we're starting off with brainstorming, and we're ending up with, hopefully, plans and prototypes. So today, the idea, kind of our initial prompt is, what did the Horizon report, what need did that meet for people? What inspiration did that give? Because obviously it met an enormous need for a lot of people based on downloads and usage and so on. So we want to figure out what that need is, and that can help us figure out how to meet it in 2018 and forward. Hello, Paul. Glad to see you. My plan for this video conference is completely unstructured. I didn't have an agenda. I didn't want to give you any PowerPoint. I want to hear from you, and I want you all to think out loud and to think together. Hello, Taylor. Just a shout out to Taylor, who's been doing yeoman work and trying to set up the digital framework for FOECast. I'm really glad for that. I'm happy to be your MC, and in that role, now that I've introduced you, and I'll shout out to people as they come in, just pick up Vanessa's question, which is a great one. And Vanessa, if I misparaphrase it, please let me know. Vanessa said that this seems like an institutional project that's focused on the fate of institutions, of colleges, libraries, museums, and libraries, and so on. And as an independent, she feels that she might not be able to participate. Well, first of all, just as organizer, we obviously want you. We obviously want to hear your thoughts always. But let me ask: did Horizon meet? Were the needs at Horizon met institutionally based, or were they based in individuals or in the larger issues of technology and education?
Well, I found personally the reports very, very useful, and I like the fact that they had both K-12 and the higher education, because most of my I guess maybe they're former colleagues by now, were more interested in higher education. I kept saying, no, you need to look at K-12, because where do you think your adjuncts are usually teaching entry-level courses? Where do you think they come from?
Yes.
They come from high school, so it behooves you to get somebody to know what's happening there, instead of just complaining about the unpreparedness. And also from the other point of view of, I'm in a small community where everybody, in a small rural community, as you know, the school system is more of a central part of the community. My son-in-law is now on the school board.
Oh, good for him.
Yeah. And I've got grandchildren here that'll be going into high school, and so I've got a personal interest in that.
Excellent.
So I think from that point of view, consumer, family member, And I've been trying to sort of, I didn't get this out in time this morning for this cast, but I'm going to be sharing over on my Facebook page to try to push more of the, because you're talking about the precaritization of the entire academic workforce,
Yeah.
which I think they should care about that. If they don't, it's like,
Yes.
then they
Yes.
need to be shaken.
So I can't separate myself from the institution in that I work in an institution, and so it has always had a direct connection to the work that I'm doing. But for me professionally and personally, there was always an interest as well. And I think that the report, even though it kind of was focused on particular institutions, whether that was K-12 or higher ed or the libraries, I think that at its heart, though, it was still exploring something bigger than that. And I did go ahead and record some of my comments in the Google Doc on the first question as well, but just leave it at that for now.
Oh, I really appreciate that. I just if I could, just let me remind everybody that this video session here is one channel. We also have a Google Doc, which is open and already flocking comments. We're going to have to spin off some subpages pretty soon. We have the hashtag FOECast, which is live on Twitter, as well as Instagram, Google+, and LinkedIn. We have my blog, which has comments available. And Taylor has already posted a blog post, I think on LinkedIn, and Jonathan Nadler on a blog post. So we got channel after channel after channel, plus the Slack group. So we love to hear all of these, wherever people feel suited. And hello, Roxanne. So good to see you. Anthony just offered a really, I think, a very, very powerful and subtle answer to Vanessa's excellent question. I'm probably going to mangle it here, but it's the idea of, for many people, they are bound up with their institution. I mean, that's their professional identity. That's how they kind of institutional cyborgs, if you will. It's hard to get away from that. But he also saw Horizon answering the larger structural questions that go beyond the given institution. So, hello, Laura. I don't know if Laura heard me. I want to make sure everyone's there. Hi. So what do you think? Again, the overall topic is the role, what needs the Horizon Report met, and we start by talking about institutions.
I also thought of
what are there, for example, particular institutions that Horizon served well? K-12, or any particular nations, or what other needs do they serve for you?
I was just gonna comment in the Google Doc, but I'll talk here now while we're kind of live and I'm listening in. I think the Horizon Report was a neat space for multiple institutions, like many of you have said, to give examples or exemplars of what's going on and what's to come in K-12, higher ed, library, and the intersection between those. I think we just started getting some of that, and the international perspective. So we did have different countries jump on and share, and I thought it was a really great hub of knowledge sharing and exploration of ideas, ways to cross-pollinate and cross-collaborate. So I work in higher ed, but I also help study with the librarians in K-12 education, so K-12 ed and school librarian programs. So information from that does go into other professional orgs and associations. So I thought it was a great opportunity for whether it's professional or trade or research entities kind of come together and collaborate on a project that's focused on a need and not a institution or this is my role or hat, but a combined effort where I think that's where you're going to get the really neat ideas, the introspectives, the questions we should be asking, and probably the solutions we want to work towards. So that's what I would hope to see in future Horizon Report gatherings or hubs, is bringing those different people together regardless of institution or role. They probably have a background that's really strong that could lend to some questions we should ask and know more about.
Indeed. Thank you so much, Laura. What a great answer. And let me welcome Maya Gorgieva, who just came in from New York. Hello, everybody.
Good morning, Brian.
Maya, we began by talking about the purpose of what needs that the Horizon Report met. And then we had an excellent thinking run, starting from Vanessa, about the institutional role. That is, to what extent did Horizon serve the needs of institutions as opposed to independence? And we've just heard from Anthony and Laura some great thoughts about the ways that it did address institutions, but also helped institutional collaboration, give us big picture ideas. What do you think? I mean, you're fascinating in your career because you are both currently and a few years ago institutional, but you were also independent, running a think tank and consulting firm. I mean, how did Horizon meet your needs in those different roles?
That's right. So I led a Center for Teaching and Learning, in which case the Horizon report played a great role, which I'm sure some of you echoed and mentioned in terms of looking strategically in our sort of next year and the next few years ahead of time, kinds of initiatives and projects we may like to engage with. So it was a great tool for us as a team. It was a great tool for us to kind of brainstorm on top of. We always thought that we should kind of like take the teams that most connect to things that we're doing and are happening in our campus. We have engaged a couple of times in doing our own Horizon and doing it in a visual way, which is something that kind of I've talked in a few places at ELI a few years back. And that was a very good exercise in terms of making our own Horizon, making it work for us. So I certainly think that sort of this type of toolkits and this type of sort of more engagement tools will play a key role in going forward, especially when we're thinking about a diverse set of institutions, organizations, who might be looking into, well, how this, collection of information or report works for me. And then from an industry standpoint, I think, and it felt for me that the Horizon is a starting point because oftentimes it surfaced a number of great topics. It surfaced some application of these topics, but it didn't go as deep, and particularly when you go in a particular field, like my field, as you know, immersive learning, augmented reality, wearables, IoT, AI now. It was a very, very quick review of these topics. So I think that certainly I feel that that's something, a future, something that we should think about in terms of, well, how do we go deeper? Is it multiple reports? Is it multiple sort of additions? Is it multiple topics sort of that will be released over the course of the year or something like that? But I certainly felt that sort of diving deep is kind of like the next step. It's like if it worked from the Center of Teaching and Learning perspective in terms of bringing awareness, in terms of strategic planning, programming planning, on the part of sort of think tanks, and the other side, it was only the beginning of the conversation. Brian, I'm not hearing you, but maybe it's me.
How about now? Can everyone hear me all right? We have an airport PA, and I want to make sure that you didn't get detailed information about a Philadelphia flight. This is really, really important. And I just want to give Maya a huge, huge thank you for doing so much work to make the FOECast come to be. She's been an invaluable ally and has done so much work digitally as well as socially and intellectually. I mean, she's definitely a leading spirit here, and I want to thank her for that. This interesting point about conversation, that the reports are individual PDFs isolated in space and time, and yet we have so many conversations that spread out across them. They may be in face-to-face events when we have workshops. Every year I would do a NerdComp workshop on Horizon, and we would have 40, 60 people, and the conversations would be fantastic. There may be discussions at the EDUCAUSE ELI event. There may be discussions online. And this is a crucial point that Horizon really served a need for provoking conversations that might otherwise have happened. By the way, if you're not noticing, the chat box is open. We've already had Vanessa, Roxanne, Anthony adding stuff. So if you're not checking it, so make sure you see that. And welcome to Doyle. Hello, Doyle Friskney. Glad to see you here. So let's hear from. I want to make sure we get to hear from everybody else. Let's hear from Kisa, Taylor, Roxanne, JJ, and Doyle. What did this Horizon mean to you? What need of yours did it satisfy? Doyle, I think you're muted.
Hello, everyone. It's Kisa.
Hi, Kisa.
How you doing? I think my sentiments are similar. I really looked at the Horizon report only because of me working in an institution teaching and learning. Just give like a small review. I tend to look more at things that I like. I really like immersive learning, VR. I also like looking at it from a little temperature gauge of what was going on here in America, and not necessarily the world within the context. I know for me, for other cultures, it never really centered around like cultural studies or cultural understanding and viewpoints. And so again, it was just a temperature gauge. It was kind of exciting sometimes, everybody looking at the report and realizing some some bits and pieces from the report when they're speaking. Again, not enough.
Well, good morning. This is JJ from the West Coast, where we're just now getting our coffee and trying to wake up.
Good morning.
For you probably have a couple of cups already down. The Horizon report really is intriguing for me personally because as an institution, Pierce College, where I'm at, is a member of the Achieving the Dream community. And we're trying to do things, and we're just now implementing a priority group for the e-learning aspect of it. We see barriers that are there for our students. We have 2 different campuses, so we see different demographics in each one. One is younger. They have running start students. They have different challenges than our, what are we used to call them, non-traditional students from the military side or things like that. And so we're trying to achieve a balance of creating an environment that is acceptable for both. We find there are huge deficits in e-learning capability, understanding what it is to be an online student and how to be able to move this forward. Some of the achievement gaps are brought out in the Horizon report, but I think, as others have said, it really scratches the surface. It's just enough to get me intrigued into it and start looking at other approaches, other ways to be able to help our students.
Oh, that makes sense. Let me say, okay, well, welcome. By the way, it's got to be ridiculously early there in California, so I'm really glad that you made it from the time zone. Just as a meta note, we structured 3 video conferences this week across the clock, so that we're trying to hit as many different people as possible. So we're today at 10 o'clock Eastern. On Wednesday we have one at 7 p.m. And then on Thursday we have one at 2 p.m. So we're trying to get everybody caffeinated or otherwise.
Oh no, this is fine. It's 7 a.m. here in Washington State, and I'm already at the office, so we're good to go.
I expect it's raining there.
Thanks.
JJ and just brought up something that's really, really important. I want to, if I could, unless I'm misunderstanding this, I want to tease this aside for a second. Both of you mentioned a topic that the report should pay attention to. So it wasn't the form of it. Vanessa mentioned adjunctification and the change of the professoriate from majority tenure track to a minority tenure track. And JJ, you mentioned the transformation of the student body to more and more, quote, non-traditional students. And I just want to pull that out because those are really, really important topics. I don't think, just personally, someone who worked on it for a while, I don't think Horizon spent a lot of time on that. But I want to note those so that we can come back to them because those are really, really, really important points to mention. And I love the way, JJ, that you ground the institutional aspect in the particular institution you have. Let me circle back to Kisa for a second, who I think is in Michigan right now. Kisa threw out a ton of great points, and I just want to hit a couple of these. One was this point about excitement, that the Horizon Report's appearance was an event. Just to, if I can, at a personal note, about 10 years ago, I was part of the unveiling of Horizon at the EDUCAUSE ELI conference. And we had this wacky setup where I would dress up as one of the Blues Brothers, and we would play music from the movie, you know, so it was goofy and fun, but the whole idea was that it was an event. It sparked excitement, and it kicks off a whole bunch of conversations. And I think that's really important. We have to think about, as we move forward with FOECast, do we want to have that kind of, you know, do we want this to be quiet in the background and influential, or do we want this to have a big splash? That's a really, really great point. I also want to second a key point that she mentioned about the cultural aspect, that Horizon for a long time focused on technology, and if you dove into a Horizon report for Brazil or Europe, you wouldn't necessarily get a sense of the cultural differences too much. Maybe that's something that we need to do going forward. We need to have a transnational report or individual nation reports that really pay attention to the local cultural differences. Thank you, Kisa. Thank you for saying that. That's really, really important.
No problem. Thank you for allowing me to share.
Oh, my pleasure. This is a platform for everyone.
Mind if I weigh in again?
Please do.
So actually, following up on the last two comments that you kind of synthesized, Brian, one of the things that kind of I heard in that is that not only should we be maybe focusing the way that the Horizon report has really kind of focused on technology-related concerns, but really that maybe a new incarnation of the report or a new angle that the report could also take on is just the higher education or the educational landscape writ large, and that's what I heard in the discussion about adjunctification as well. In that, you know, there may not really be a good journal or a good platform to really kind of discuss the broader aspects that are impacting higher education. They're not all technological, as we know, and so maybe that is something that a next generation type report could dive into, or that it becomes even maybe a parallel report or something to explore as well.
Okay, so now we're back to the question again of format, which is really, you know, to be thinking about is what kind of shape this would be. I mean, Horizon was a PDF produced after a series of wiki discussions hosted on a series of wiki pages. And that worked. I mean, obviously that functioned well. So, and it was also, generally speaking, the higher education report was an annual report. Some of the other ones were less regular, like K through 12 and libraries. You know, is that the kind of format we want for something going forward? Or do we want something else? Anthony and Maya were talking about, well, what if we have every 3-year report, you know, or every 4-year report, and then we issue individual boosts. Kisa has an example to look at. Kisa, you want to tell us about that? I think it might kill my bandwidth if I click on it, but do you want to say a few words about it? What you like about it?
Oh, I'm sorry. It took me a while to get to my mute button.
Oh, it's okay. It's okay.
Yeah, I like the innovating pedagogy one. It doesn't go as deep as maybe many people might want to go, but I think it goes deep enough for me. I don't know, the type of learner that I am and the type of learners that I like to support. They're more multi-sensory. They just don't look at things from the 5 senses. They look at it from a multi-sensory point of view. And I feel like this type of report sometimes kind of touches on going that way for these type of learners and how I can support them in the online realm.
Well, that's a really good point. Thank you. If you guys have had a chance to check that out, like I said, I'm on an awful bandwidth right now, so I think that'll just explode my airport if I click on it. But please take a look at that. Especially that's a British one. I think that's not the Open University, is it? But that's, again, it's great to have a perspective that's outside the U.S. Thank you, Kisa. So let's see, Roxanne. Oh, please go ahead. Please go ahead. I'm sorry.
Hi. I'm thinking that the Horizon report, I almost said the New Horizon report, is a framework for the different, I guess, stakeholders and faculty and people who are attracted to this type of report for certain reasons. So we need to identify who our audience is and then develop a framework for how we develop the format. I think that by identifying the audience would help us with that, instead of, or maybe using a silo approach and having different areas like K-12, higher ed, technology. Maybe we need to have a real wow edition to really impress everyone with maybe a next gen type of version.
That's fantastic.
I'm still processing all of it, and I haven't had my first cup yet.
Oh, please, someone get that woman coffee.
I was out earlier at an appointment, but yes, I'm trying to process all of the information and really in my mind think of what would look like a great framework that would really put that wow effect and be impressive and attract all learners, all different stakeholders to want to review the work and look at it and participate. Definitely it's a participatory document. That's how I feel, whether it's an annotatable document, whether I annotate, and I believe the participation factor is definitely important.
I agree. If I can, just so everyone knows, this is Roxanne at like low energy, and she's throwing off ideas like mad. When she gets high energy, this is a person you have to be really, really careful about. She's a one-woman army. And this is a great thing with videos. You can see me nodding vigorously at all these points. Let me grab one of those points and turn to all of you and ask, Roxanne, you asked about the audience and who is reading this. Let me just ask everybody, just quickly, who are the Horizon readers? Who are the Horizon consumers in your experience? Deans, CIOs, students, faculty? Who?
I could pop in real quick here, and
please.
This is Taylor. I'm out in Denver, and I'm kind of on the move, so I'm popping in and out, but listening in. The one piece, and this actually ties back to sort of the broader question. The only piece I could add, just sort of broadly, is I used it in a lot of ways to just sort of represent that I'm keeping an eye on sort of the broader pulse. So I did often find myself just pulling pieces into other reports and other things that I was working on internally, and then those were being consumed by sort of broader leadership and stakeholders within the institution. So I definitely didn't find that leaders were necessarily consuming it in its entirety, but I would certainly find pieces, and they it had a reputation that they would say, okay, there's clearly an eye on what's going on sort of nationally in the landscape. So
thank you, Taylor. Just quick question, what's your role where you are, so everyone can know?
I do a lot of instructional design work, and then also sort of teach in that capacity at CU Denver, and then I also just say sort of culture crafting and just sort of working through some of the broader cultural issues within higher ed. So
thank you.
Three quarters ID and a quarter just sort of pushing back on some existing norms.
All right, that's great. Please go on.
As far as audience, here at Dartmouth, I know that our CIO was certainly aware of it in the past, and our Dean of the Libraries as well. But I would say that it was kind of the next tier down that you started to see kind of a greater dive into it, at least among the library management group. And then in central IT, I would say it was largely within instructional technologies and instructional designers and ed tech folks who would be kind of taking a deeper look into it. So that's kind of the audience that I would often see here. Maybe also periodically classroom technology services, but that's more of the what's the impact of technology, or how do we prepare for some of that impact?
So instructional designers, technologists, to a degree CIOs, library deans, and then trickling down. This is good. How the rest of you? Are there other audiences, or is this complete?
Can you hear me yet, Brian?
Yes, Doyle.
I've always I've always enjoyed the Horizon Report. But my problem with it at a university community, and I've always been in technology, is the Horizon Report is often read by technologists or people who are interested in technology.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
In this reimagination of the Horizon Report, I'm wondering, how do you bridge it to the rest of the community? Because the rest of the community is so much larger.
It really is. No, that's a great point. What do the rest of you think? Have you had occasions where you found other people beyond the technologically interested who have been doing this?
So I will chime in on that because certainly I personally have been always very excited with the release of the report, being on the expert panel, contributing in various ways. But I do agree that it resonated with the instructional technology or technology-enhanced education on campus. Much better than it resonated with the academic, sort of more the teaching and learning and the pedagogical and even online learning parts of the house. Usually those people kind of felt look at it in a very kind of quick way. I certainly have played a role in bringing awareness and bringing it around at meetings and educating, but did not always share strategies for improvement. It kind of did an overview of the technologies and surfaced some examples. But those people felt that it's not their report. And it was much more exciting to the people who are really on the technology fronts and on the forefront and the thinking, well, what are wearables are going to do for us? How are we going to think about this? So it created a framework for the technology part of the house that was better serving their needs than it did for the teaching and learning part. And I remember like 5 years back, the report going into the flipped classroom. And we were very, very much working on flipped classroom projects, but it just really was so cursory. And in a way, we actually took and had to create a whole series of blog posts sort of on top of that topic, which is an excellent topic to bring the teaching and learning part of the house. So agree with the other sentiments that, while we all wanted to be more about pedagogy and about the student, it often ended up to be something else.
I see. Just, sorry, quick meta note. My Zoom account means this is going to run out of time in about 7 minutes. So I just want to make sure that you're all framed for that. This is fantastic. I'll make sure you don't miss Laura's had a great catalog. Laura has in the chat box of instructional designers, student affairs, academic advising, some faculty, the ones who taught online. And I want to come back to something that Taylor said, which is really important. He mentioned that he works in culture crafting. Maybe this is impressionistic by me, but I get the feeling that NMC tended to attract unusual people. The strong emphasis on creativity, which is not universal across education and technology. And when Taylor speaks about culture crafting and pushing back on culture, that seems to me, it just intuitively felt, yeah, that's right. So there's an extra spin or an extra bite to that. And Maya, you also echoed a point here I want to make sure we don't lose sight of, which is I was asking who the audience was, and we've got this document. But you and Taylor both point out quite accurately that, well, there's a secondary audience where this gets grabbed, repurposed in a blog post or another report, and then that can circulate to other people who might not be technologically interested. In the chat box a little while ago, we had a distinction between the future of education and technology and the future of education, which can include technology. That's we seem to be going back and forth on that as a major distinction. But before I summarize more, Kisa and Roxanne had a great point. It seems to resonate with what we've been saying before, which is to make this an actionable document. Kisa, Roxanne, can you say a bit more about what an actionable document would be? How that would be different?
I don't know. For me, I like it I like to see it more tangible within the community at large.
Hmm.
I believe Doyle had, I think me and Doyle was speaking on the same level. Like, how is this integrated? How real of a data is this for people who leave higher ed? Because everybody's not going to stay in higher ed
Right.
and go into whatever community that they're going into to ensure some type of change. Like, where does the values of this report or this document, how is that, are those values carried out? Where's the action from that? And I'm just asking questions. I don't know the answer myself, but I'm wondering what other people are thinking as well.
Please, please. What the rest of you guys think? We're all nodding quietly and agreeing with action, which is kind of the opposite of action. But
well, actually, I wonder if the action piece might actually come from the community that the next generation helps to develop. In other words, you know, what if the actionable elements, you know, become a kind of like collaborators wanted? You know, here are the issues, here are the topics that are presented in the report, but then that you were able to develop a community of practitioners or experimenters who are basically saying, look, you know, my institution is a small one. We don't have a lot of resources, but I'm interested in pairing up with other people in this community that might be interested in kind of how we approach this topic across institutions. Or, I mean, I'm sure that that is happening professionally regardless, but I think there's a lot of people for whom that is still one of the challenges, is how do you begin to really engage with others in the community, and maybe this becomes a foundational element that opens up the possibility for collaboration elsewhere.
so maybe, you know, just not to be flip, but maybe one part of this is to be a social connector, to have you know, want ads or RFPs or personals, or I mean, the Horizon report was loaded with examples that you could point to. So those are there, but what you're describing is a way of connecting to the example, saying, okay, here's someone doing this at Wollongong, and they want help. Or, you know, here's Roxanne doing this in Connecticut, and she'd like to share it with you. I mean, oh, that's fascinating. That's fascinating. There's also, sorry, I feel like I should just stop talking, just read the chat box, because you guys have a small seminar going at top speed with lots and lots of things. And once again, Keith asks the deep question that Taylor is answering in typically brilliant way. My sense is that this should be a community document or project, whatever the form it is. This should be participatory, where everyone can be involved. And there's a lot of ways that could unfold, but that's important. That's a key need that this met. Before we run out of time, was there any other need that Horizon met that you want to throw into the mix that we haven't touched on yet? Was it great for media services? Was it useful for a particular sector like museums or community colleges? Did it connect you with other people? Are there any other needs that we should get on the table? Unless we nailed it. I think we nailed it. Okay. I've been recording this. I'm not sure if it'll function, but let me first of all thank you all for a fantastic discussion. I'm so glad. This is the first FOECast ideation event, and you've rocked the joint. Thank you all so much. Please look online, check the Twitter feed, check the Slack channel, check the Google Doc, check my blog. There's more and more coming up there. We'd love to hear more from everybody else. And thank you, Vanessa, for the point about libraries. When this logs off, we'll be done. But thank you again, and I'll see you online. Happy ideation, friends.